Thank you very much. It's an honor.
Donald Trump may be known for his unpredictability, but he embraced a softer tone on trade with Canada, and it's being welcomed by NAFTA negotiators.
We have a very good relationship. They came yesterday to the White House, and we negotiated late into the evening. They're in the White House right now. We're negotiating with them right now, and they want to be a part of the deal. And we gave till Friday, and I think we're probably on track. We'll see.
The Canadians were not actually at the White House today, but high-level discussions appear to be progressing. The Foreign Affairs Minister met with Trump's trade team for about 4 hours in total, with negotiators instructed to talk overnight if necessary.
Both parties are coming to this stage of the negotiation with a lot of goodwill.
A senior source tells CBC News while there is a real commitment to wrap up negotiations by Trump's self-imposed Friday deadline, talks aren't quite there yet. Canada's main concern is the U.S. demand to weaken the dispute settlement system, or what's known as Chapter 19. Canada appears prepared to let American farmers sell more dairy products north of the border if the Americans will compromise.
No NAFTA deal is better than a bad NAFTA deal.
The Prime Minister would not discuss specifics in public, but he seemed optimistic.
There is a possibility of getting to a good deal for Canada by Friday. We are standing very firm on a broad range of things.
Justin Trudeau will update Canadian premiers tomorrow on the state of talks in a conference call. Chrystia Freeland will do the same with her NAFTA council too. After a year of negotiations, it appears all sides may be ready to finally get to a yes.
In the end, for Donald Trump, there has to be a way for him to say, I won. And for us to make it acceptable, we have to be able to say we didn't lose. And if we reach that sort of sweet spot, well, then there may be a deal to be made by Friday.
And our Katie Simpson is still in Washington on NAFTA watch for us. Okay, Katie, Canada's been away from the negotiating table for 5 weeks, only came back to sit down yesterday. Is getting to a win something that's possible here?
Well, to build on what former Premier Charest just said, Trump can point to improved labor standards in Mexico as a win. And if Canada gives American farmers more access to the Canadian dairy market, that would be a win for the U.S. too. If Canada can get out with a dispute resolution system and supply management intact, that wouldn't be a loss.
Okay, you mentioned the Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland. They're going to hold some private NAFTA briefings tomorrow. What should we read from that? What else can we expect?
It's important to note the Prime Minister's office wants people to know about the Premier's briefing, suggesting it might have something positive to discuss privately. So that's a subtle hint we picked up on. But those high-level talks between Chrystia Freeland and her American counterparts, they're expected to keep going right on through till tomorrow.
Okay, and you'll be there right until this thing gets wrapped up or not. Katie Simpson in Washington, thank you.
Thanks.
Canada also scored a big trade victory today. It has to do with stiff penalties levied by the Trump administration all the way back in January on newsprint from this country.
A U.S. trade tribunal overturned that decision and said, no, you shouldn't be imposing tariffs on Canadian forestry workers. So this is really good news, but it's also something that we've been working very, very hard for.
The U.S. slapped tariffs of up to 32%, claiming Canadian paper products hurt the American industry. The independent tribunal found that to be false and so scrapped the duties. And it's that kind of trade action that Trudeau points to as proof that Canada needs to preserve the so-called dispute settlement mechanism that's in NAFTA. You'll be hearing a lot about it. So what does that mean, and why is it such a big sticking point? It's commonly known as Chapter 19 of NAFTA, and it's meant to solve disputes between trading partners. But the Trump administration wants rid of it altogether. For Canada, it is a line in the sand. So why so important to one country and not the other?
Just as good fences make good neighbors, good dispute settlement systems make good trading partners.
If the United States decides to impose duties on a Canadian product, Canada can push back and turn to a neutral panel of arbiters to assess whether the duties are actually legal, instead of relying on American courts to make decisions. Canada has turned to Chapter 19 dozens of times and won, most recently about softwood lumber. But some Americans consider this kind of dispute resolution to be a potential threat to their sovereignty, including the U.S. Trade Representative.
Why should a foreign national be able to come in and not have the rights of Americans in the American court system, but have more rights than Americans have in the American court system?
Getting rid of such a measure could mean duties are just imposed and counter duties become the response and a trade war follows. At least one American study points out that Chapter 19 might work because Canada, the U.S. and Mexico have actually taken less trade action against one another than other non-NAFTA countries.